Today we're going to be doing newborn assessment. I'm going to be demonstrating the skill of newborn assessment. And we are going to follow along in our lab manual. The first step of newborn assessment is to identify the newborn. The newborn may be in the nursery, in the crib, or it could be in the mother's room, just depending on the situation at that time. But we need to identify our newborn. So right now our newborn is in with the mother, so we're going to go in and identify our newborn. The best way to identify a newborn, of course, is just like with any adult, any other patient that you'd be taking care of, is to check the identification band. The identification band on a newborn is usually on their ankle. That's usually the best way that you can identify them, is by looking at that name band. And right now we're checking, and this is baby girl Miller, and that's who we wanted. And you always, too, what's important is you always want to check the newborn's band with the mother's band. Anytime you're picking up the baby from the mother's room, or anytime that you're taking the newborn into the mother, make sure that you identify them properly and they match. We're going to take the newborn over here to the exam table. First thing we're going to do is just expose them. You're going to need a measuring tape to measure them, and we're going to measure them in inches, not the other side, which is centimeters. It's going to be measured in inches. And we are going to document our measurements on this growth chart. And you guys will be provided with a sheet just like this with the measurement, or with the growth chart on there, which you can document your measurements on. Always make sure it coordinates with the age of the baby that you're doing. Of course, this case we're doing a newborn, so we want to make sure that it starts with newborn. And this is for a baby girl. The pink sheets are for girls, the blue sheets are for boys, because the percentiles kind of differ between the males and females just a little bit. So this one says girls birth to 36 months. What we're first going to do with our measurements when we do get them is we're going to write them down here in these columns. Once we get them on the column, then we will worry about how we document them on the growth chart. Okay, so first thing on our column, let's just go ahead and put our date. Let's go ahead and put today's date on there. Okay. And then age in months is our next part on the column, and of course that's going to be 0 months. Alright, and then going back to your skill book, the second step in your skill book is to measure the infant from the top of the head to the heel of the foot, making sure the leg is fully extended. So in other words, we're going to measure their length first. There's 2 ways of measuring the length. I think the best way to measure the length, and it's probably the easiest until you really get used to doing it, because you've got a newborn that you're trying to not only secure and make sure that they stay safe, but they're wiggling and they're moving. So what I like to do is to wait and not extend my measuring tape yet. I like to go ahead and make some marks on my exam paper at the top of the head and then at the heel of the foot, and then I will measure from those points with the tape. So first we're going to make our mark here on the paper at the top of the head. Just make sure you have it lined up with the top of the head. Then we're going to make sure, it's really important to make sure that you extend that knee, that you extend that leg as fully as possible. And then we're going to make a mark at the heel with that leg extended. Okay. Then we can just kind of set the baby over to the side just a little bit, just where we can kind of use our measuring tape and extend it. Like I said, we're going to use inches, not centimeters. First mark to the end here where the not going to get any more specific on our inches than by quarters, okay? So this baby was 21.5 inches. But if we had something that was the next mark up or the next mark below, those are quarter inches. So we would just measure those to the nearest quarter inch. We're not going to get into being technical and saying 7/16 of an inch or anything like that. But we're going to just do it in quarters. So we're going to go ahead where we keep it in our, keep it written down where we don't have to think about it. Let's just go ahead and put 21.5 inches in our length column. Another way to measure the length would be to actually take our measuring tape and start at the beginning of the head on 0 and then extend it, which is hard to do. That's why I say it's probably the easiest way to do it from the marks. So from the top of the head, and then extend the leg, and see it's hard to do that and hold your tape, but extend the leg, make sure it's on the heel, and once again measure. Okay, so you can do it that way if you feel comfortable doing it, just whichever you prefer. Alright, and you notice we haven't had to undress the baby yet because we just simply measured their length. There wasn't any reason to undress them. There's no reason to get them cold because newborns, they need to stay warm. They don't need to be cold for extended periods of time. Okay, next we're going to measure the head circumference. And it says we're going to place the measuring tape around the head just above the eyebrow, the ear pinna, and over the occipital prominence. So eyebrow, top of the ear, which is the pinna, and the occipital prominence is the largest protrusion of the back of the head. And you can kind of feel your own head, you can kind of tell where that is, but it would be the largest circumference of the head. So the occipital prominence is right there where that occipital bone is. Make sure you use your 3 landmarks, and we have 13.5 inches for the head. Okay, 13.5. We're going to document that on our paper. The next thing we're going to measure is the chest circumference. Now, for this, we do have to go ahead and undress our baby because we need to measure the chest circumference without any clothes on. Whoops, sounds like I'm banging its head. Okay. Now, with the chest, we're going to measure around at the nipple line. So we're going to have our tape below the shoulders. It's maybe falling apart here. Okay, so at the nipple line, and it looks like we have right at about 11 3/4 inches. So 11 3/4. Now the chest circumference is not on this sheet. You're going to just have to add in the chest circumference. I'm just going to simply write in chest, and I'm going to write in the measurement on there. Okay, so 11 3/4 inches. I'm just going to write it as chest and then just write it in at the top. Okay. The next thing we need to do, we're going to get their weight. The weight really needs to be measured with no clothing on. If you were to weigh them with some type of article of clothing or even their diaper, you're going to have to weigh that first, and then you'd have to subtract that weight. Like if it was a diaper, you'd weigh the diaper and then subtract that. So the best, most accurate way of measuring them is just to measure them without any clothes on. But what we first need to do is zero our scale, and we're going to go ahead and place our exam paper on the scale, then zero it. So we're going to come over here to the scale. There's different scale types out there. There's digital scales, which you may see in, the facilities like a hospital. This scale that we have here is just like the scales that you were probably familiar with in the doctor's offices or that we had in nurse aid class. It's the slide type scale. So we're going to make sure that our scale is at 0. Make sure it's zeroed. It's, floating between the top and the bottom, which it is. If it was not, then you come around here to the left-hand side and you turn this black knob to get it zeroed. And you can see that when I turn that, it makes a little difference in there. Okay, so once we have our scale on 0, we're going to take our baby. I would then take its diaper off. And we're going to come over here to the scale. Place them on the scale. Make sure you always have a hand on them, or make sure that they're, staying safe while you're, working the scale. We're going to start sliding the scale. Of course, there's 16 ounces in a pound, so you always have to keep that in mind. So the big marks are in pounds, and then in between the big marks, you'll see like a half a pound. So a half a pound would be 8 ounces. And each smaller mark between the pound and half pounds is 4 ounces. Oops, I'm not going enough. This maybe is right at, which is easy, 6 pounds even, really. So 6 pounds even. And like I said, every small mark between the half and the whole is 4 ounces. But this one is 6 pounds even. Okay, so we've got the weight. We're going to take them back over here to our exam table. Go ahead and write your weight down before you forget on your paper. So we're going to put 6 pounds. We're then going to dress our baby. Now it says this as part of your skill, which yes, it does count as your skill, but I mean, we're not judging you, or it doesn't make a difference how perfectly you dress them or whatever, but you just want to get their clothes back on. And it seems like it's harder to dress a mannequin than it is a real baby sometimes, just as much. Okay. Oh, I guess it would help if you put a diaper on the baby. Sorry. Baby needs a diaper. Okay, and what we're going to do is go ahead and swaddle the infant in their blanket. And, once again, that's really not specifically part of your skill, but it is a good thing to know. Swaddling the baby makes them feel secure. It's something that, takes practice. Not everybody can do a good job swaddling, and, I'm not the greatest at it either necessarily, but what you do is you take your blanket and make 4 corners with the blanket. Okay, so kind of in a diamond shape. You've got your 4 corners. The top of the blanket, that corner, you're going to fold down, and you're going to place the baby's shoulders kind of even with that down fold. Okay, so the first corner you're going to wrap around the baby, just like that, kind of to the other side. The bottom corner you're going to pull up. What I like to do is that corner that ends up coming up, I tuck it behind their shoulder. And then you've got this last corner that you pull over the baby on this side. And then with this extra over here, you just kind of wrap it around them and take it around to the back side. Okay? So we're done with the baby. It's swaddled, it's dressed, and we're, of course, then we could just take it in with its mother, which is not part of the skill, but we're going to take it in. We would make sure that they identify with each other. We check the mother's armband, check the baby's armband once again. Your skill says that the measurements must have 100% accuracy. So everything that you all get on there must match ours. And then the last thing is we're going to document this on the newborn assessment sheet in the graphics, which is what we've already started, but now with our specific measurements, we're going to document that on the growth chart. The way this works, the first line, or the first item that we're going to be documenting on is length. And if you will look on the very left-hand side, it has numbers that go up and down. And then across, it has age in months. So we're going to start on the very last line over here to the left, which is 0 months. So all of our dots that we're going to chart are going to be on that left-hand line. Okay, so length, we ended up getting 21.5 inches. And you'll just kind of have to look at your chart a little bit better when it's closer up to you. But the big marks are specific inches. So we start here at 18, it goes 19, 20, 21, 22. And then to get in between the 21 and 22 is where we need to be because it's 21.5 inches. You just kind of have to go just right there in between. And we're just going to make a little dot there between the 21 and 22 mark. And I don't know if you all can see this, but I just have a dot there. Okay, and what I want to do with this dot now that I have it is I want to kind of make my curve here. And this up here in the pink, which is where we would actually fall for the length, it's above our white. Our white is where the average baby would fall. Okay, so this is average for gestational age in the white, which means they fall between the 5th and 95th percentile. Well, this baby, because he's so long, he actually is larger than the 95th percentile on his length. And that's all you need to tell us. You just need to say, if I follow this out, it's going to be above the 95th percentile. Okay, so that's length. Weight is next. And our length, or our weight is 6 pounds. So we're going to make a dot on the 6 pound mark. We're then going to follow the curve out on our 6 pounds. And if I follow that out, it's kind of going to be between two different lines. And I'll kind of follow it where you guys can see what I'm talking about. If I follow the 6 pound out, and let's just say, just for me to be able to see it a little bit better, I make myself a line, which is fine. They fall between the 10th and 25th percentile. Now there's no way to tell exact more than that. You just need to tell us it falls between the 10th and 25th percentile, and that's good enough. Okay, then last thing we chart on here, because chest is not in our graphics, we just had to write it. The last thing is on the back, and that's head circumference. And they were 13.5 inches. So I'm going to make a mark at 13.5. Got my dot. I'm going to follow my dot out. And if I follow the curve, once again, they're going to fall between two different categories. They're going to fall between the 25th and the 50th percentile on their head circumference. And that's as close as you can really get on that too. So just tell us between those two would be fine. Okay, and then once you've graphed those and we look at it or we go over it with you, you're pretty much done with your skill. Okay, thank you.